I wanted to ask you something too. When was the last time that you spent money on yourself? Has it been recently? Has it been a while? I'm terrible at spending money on myself. I have this sweater that you've probably seen me wear in probably 90% of the videos that I do. It probably looks like I record them all the same day because I just wear the same clothes. I spilled coffee on it this weekend when I was wearing it. And so I didn't have it for a couple of days. And then I'm like, oh, I have to wash my clothes so that I can have my sweater back. And I felt weird because, I didn't have it. And so then I was like, okay, well, maybe I need another sweater like that. And of course, I bought it like 10 years ago, probably longer than that, at this store that doesn't even exist anymore. And it's so old that it's definitely out of fashion. So I went looking on places like Poshmark to see if I could find it. And they're like, yeah, nobody has one of those sweaters that they want to sell. So I'm like, okay, then I have to go buy a whole new sweater. And that's this whole other thing, right? Because I hate shopping for clothes. I just hate it so bad. And when I bought this sweater, it was at this discount store that was literally 2,000 miles from where I live now. And I'm sure that it probably only cost me like 10 or 15, maybe $20. And now when I look at sweaters, it's like, oh, they're more than $100. And I'm like, ooh, $100? Like, really? It's kind of this money mindset that we have, though, that we learn when we're young. And I remember when I was young going shopping for there were usually times during the year when we bought clothes. Usually, this time of year when you're going back to school, we went shopping at JCPenney and Montgomery Ward's. I don't even think Montgomery Ward's exist anymore. And I think JCPenney is all the way out too, unfortunately. And we went to Sears, which I think Sears is pretty much gone too, and Kmart, which is also gone. But I remember going to the mall because these stores were in the mall, and we would walk past all of the expensive stores, and we would never go in any of the expensive stores. My mom was just like, no, we can't afford it, and you don't want to buy those type of clothes anyway. They're just way too expensive, and we're just looking for something that's more economical. And I understand, my parents didn't have a lot of money, and there was 4 of us kids, and so it was like, okay, we have to stick with what we can afford, right? But I stuck with that money, that money mindset has stuck with me throughout my life, even though I make more money now than I ever have. When I like to go into those stores now, but I still feel weird. I feel like people are watching me and I don't belong there. And I know now that it's just this mindset of this is too expensive for me, even though I can totally afford to buy clothes in there. Even though I can totally afford to pay $100 for a sweater now, it's still just ooh, that's expensive. It's almost like you have to reprogram your brain to say, hold on, $100 really isn't that expensive for a sweater, right? It's definitely something that you can afford. And obviously, if you only have one sweater that you like, it's something that you need. So when was the last time that you spent money on yourself? What did you buy? What things feel like it's okay? Because I know that I have a list of things that are it's okay for me to spend a lot of money on certain things. Like concert tickets, obviously. I'm always talking about New Kids on the Block. I'll spend $1,000 on a front row concert ticket, no problem. That's totally fine. I can do that. That's acceptable. Spending $1,000 on a sweater, though, or a pair of jeans, yeah, no, I would never do that. That's that's not okay. I recently spent $4,000 on a course. I call it a business course, but it was kind of business / personal growth course. And before I bought it, I was like, that I saw the price and I'm like, that's way too expensive. I would never do that. And then the lady who teaches it, who is fantastic, she did a whole presentation on how can you afford not to. And it totally flipped around the way that I was thinking about it. If a $4,000 course can change your life, can make you think about things differently, can make you approach your life differently, can make such a huge impact on your life, can change the way that you think about everything, how can you afford not to? And I really hadn't thought about it that way until I listened to her presentation. If a $100 sweater can change the way that you feel about yourself, can change the way that you look, can change so many different things. Like, how can you afford not to? If concert tickets give you something to look forward to, if it gives you this amazing experience with your friends a couple of times a year, how can you afford not to buy them? Right? How can you afford not to? That's just something I wanted you to think about. I know that I'm seeing some of the comments and people saying this is kind of random and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But I just wanted you to think about how much something so little can change, and to flip the thinking of, a lot of times we think, oh, that's expensive, I can afford that. But if you turn it around and say, how can I afford not to? Then it makes a whole different argument in your head, and it makes you think about things a lot differently, especially too when you go back to, like, what did my parents tell me? What were their beliefs about money? One of the things that my parents were constantly telling me is, we don't have the money. We don't have the money. I don't have any money. I don't have any money. And when my niece was growing up, she lived with my parents a lot of the time, and she was like, she wanted something, I forget what it was. So she needed something for school or something. And we were talking about it, and she's like, well, I was going to ask Grandma and Grandpa, but I know they don't have any money. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, they're always saying that they don't have any money, and I don't want to, like, bother them with not having any money. And I'm like, when have they ever told you no? Like, every time that you've needed something for school, when have they ever said, no, we can't afford that? They've always made it work. I mean, they may not be able to buy you, like, designer clothes, like Louis Vuitton stuff, and, we never had, like, Coach or Kate Spade or anything like that, but we always had everything that we needed. We had brands like Nike and Under Armour and, all that kind of stuff that was popular at the time. And she's like, oh, that's right. Like, she's like, well, why do they say that they don't have any money? I'm like, that's just a belief that they have. I mean, they do have money. They can afford, obviously, we've never gone without food. We've always had clothes, we've always had, when they need to buy a car, like, they can buy a car. It's not like they don't have any money. It's like they don't want to spend the money right now. And she was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes total sense. I'm like, listen, I guarantee you that they have a savings account, and if they needed to spend $1,000 today, they could do that. And she's like, oh, okay, I get it. But then I started thinking about, I do the same thing, right? I always say, I don't have money. I don't have money. I don't have money. And then when this opportunity just came up to buy this course, my first thought was, I don't have $4,000 sitting in the bank. I can't afford that. But then I had seen this course for 3 years now. And when I first saw it, I really wanted to buy it, but I knew that I really couldn't afford it then. And then it was like, I saw it again. And the first time I saw it, it was $2,000. And then every time I saw it, it kept going up in price. And I was like, it's just going to keep going up. So if I'm going to buy it, I'm going to have to buy it, right? And it did. It made a huge difference in my life. It changed so many different things. It changed one of the big things is how you look at money. It got me to look at a lot of the stories that I tell myself, a lot of the stories that I learned when I was young, that especially, things about money, you don't think about it from that perspective. You think about things from a scarcity perspective, right? You think about things, especially if you watch the news. I have gotten into the habit of watching the news in the last couple of years, and I'd never watched the news before. And so I've been watching the news, and everything is like fear and scarcity, and there's not enough, and what are we gonna do? And it's like this doom and gloom end of the world. And it was like an addiction. It is like an addiction. And I have an anxiety disorder. So I would watch the news, and then I would try and go to bed. Every single night, I would lay in bed, eyes glued open, in like this fear and anxiety place that was like, I don't know what to do. And I kept thinking, like, it kept getting worse. Like, it's the end of the world. I don't know what to do. And so I started like trying to go back to all the things, because I have depression and I have anxiety. So I know that when I start feeling bad, there are certain things that I can do to make it better, right? So I'm like in this really bad place, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing differently now? How can I fix the things that, I have this set of things that I do. And one of the things is like, I'm watching the news. Like, I can't do that. I have to stop doing that, because I never did it before, and I was fine before, and I need to stop. And it took like several weeks to stop, because it is like an addiction. It's like you have to know what's going on. And I know that it doesn't make a difference if you know what's going on. It really doesn't. I've known that for my whole life, but it's still like this addiction that's like, I have to know, until you can finally break the addiction. And I replaced it with meditation, because I've heard so many people talking about meditation recently that I was like, okay, I took Gabby Bernstein's meditation challenge, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this and see if this is actually help, see if this is actually this great thing that people talk about it being. And within like 2 or 3 days of doing that, my anxiety level came back down to where it usually is. I didn't have that big of a problem going to sleep. I'm not in this constant fight or flight, like terror mode. I'm not thinking about all of these things that I can't control, that make no difference whether they take up space in my head or not. I'm thinking about more positive things. I'm able to think about lifting up my energy to out of like fear and scarcity and into happiness, into joy, into abundance, knowing that there's enough for everybody, and there's no reason that we have to be scared. There's no reason that you have to live in that mindset all the time. And part of that comes back to my money mindset, right? Which is like, I never have enough. There's never enough. But then I look at so many people who have so much, and the people that I surround myself with are these people who are building businesses and have had a lot of success, because I want to look at those people and say, okay, what did they do? How can I model what they're doing? How can I get to a better place? So I look at what they do, and I'm like, okay, well, they talk about manifesting. They talk about abundance. They talk about letting go of expectations. And I'm like, oh, that feels icky. I have lots of expectations. I have this whole life that I want to live made up in my head. It's an INFJ thing, right? We like to think about the future. We like to think about what could happen. And we have very vivid imaginations, right? So it almost feels like it's a movie in your head that's playing out. And sometimes it feels so real that it's like, I can dream this into existence. It can happen. And it has happened for me multiple times. So like I have that belief that this could happen. But there's also expectations that are attached to all of those things, right? And so when they're not happening right now, then it's really easy to say, they're never going to happen. It's never going to work. And to get into this really dark place that just feels terrible. And the thought of letting go of those expectations is like, well, the expectations are holding me down, but they're actually keeping me going too. So it's this weird place of like push and pull at the same time. And I was listening to this podcast yesterday, and they were talking about different types of religions, and one of them mentioned Buddhism. And I'm not Buddhist, but I thought this quote was really interesting. Apparently, this is something that Buddha said, or that Buddhists believe, which is the cause of all suffering is desire and expectation. And I thought, wow, that's certainly true for me, because I mean, there's a lot of things that I desire and I expect them in my life too. And that definitely causes me a lot of suffering, is the expectation and then the idea that they might not happen. And letting go of those expectations is very challenging. But I learned something new that connects all of this stuff together, hopefully. It does in my head, so hopefully it connects all of this stuff together in your head too. This idea of just being open, rather than having all of these expectations, rather than coming from a place of scarcity and saying there's not enough, or I don't have enough, or I need more. Just holding your energy in a different place, which is, I'm open to it. I'm open to more. What if there is enough? That's another thing. What if? Anytime you have this fear or doubt in your head of it's not going to happen, or I wish that it would happen, and I wish that would happen like right now, change it to, what if it does happen? What if there is enough? What if I can be incredibly successful? What if I can buy a $100 sweater? What if I can buy a $4,000 course? What if that's all that I need, is just to let go of the expectations? And what if I do let go of the expectations? What if what actually happens is better than my dreams? I mean, that's something that is really difficult for me to think about, because I'm like, I don't want anything better. I just want what I want. And I'm cool if it's like not even the greatest thing. It's just what I want, and I planned it, and I spent like years planning it. So this is just perfect. Can I just have this? This is the part of the INFJ personality where control comes in, right? I read one time that we're very controlling. And I was like, I don't think so. I'm very easygoing, go with the flow, especially around other people. Like, I want you to be happy. Whatever you need, I'm good with. I don't really have a lot of control. And then I started thinking about my expectations and my planning and how difficult it is to let go of those things. And it's like, oh, that's where the control is. That's where it is. I like to be in control of that. I like to be in control of my space and of what happens in my life. And when I can't control it, then it gets It's all of the icky feelings, all of the, ugh, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be somewhere that I can control. All of that control keeps my anxiety down to a manageable level. And when the control goes away, then it's like, ugh, I don't like this. Let's do something else. So, yes, just be open. And every time you start to feel resistance, every time your brain starts to bring you back to where you're normally at, think about what if? What if? What if I could be open? You don't even have to be open. Just what if I could be open to something better? What if I could be open to abundance? What if I could be open to spending money on myself? What if I could be happier than where I am right now? What if? All right, before I go, I want to tell you about something that I'm doing that I'm super excited about. It's called the 21-Day Come Home Challenge, which is 21 days to come home to yourself, to feel more like yourself, to be more in tune with who you are, to improve your confidence and your self-love. You can find all of it on my website, which is infjwoman.com. If you go to infjwoman.com/comehome, you'll get all of the details of it. And if you sign up in the next 24 hours, I added a special bonus, which is a 3-day self-love retreat. And of course, I don't have the email in front of me. I called it something really special. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, it's called Self-Love Abundance Retreat. It's a 3-day retreat that will teach you everything that you need to know about self-love abundance, everything that I've learned about it in the last 5 or 6 years that I've been studying it. The retreat is valued at $179 or $197. Sorry, apparently I'm dyslexic. $197, and if you sign up for the Come Home Challenge, you'll get that for free. And the Come Home to Yourself Challenge is only $37. And it's only going to take up just about 10 minutes of your day. It'll be something in the morning that'll give you a quick win for the day, which will help you with confidence and self-love and lifting up your energy and really just feeling like you can come home to yourself, which is, I think, it's what we're really striving for as INFJs, right? We really just want to be more of ourselves, to be less people pleasers, less of a chameleon, less of telling people exactly what they want to hear, and more of like owning yourself, more of being your own self. I don't feel like I'm explaining it very well, but I think you guys know what I mean. You really just want to share, you want to own your personality and share it with the world, and you want that acceptance and the understanding from the world too. Also, another thing that's a really big thing that's a part of this challenge is there's a special Facebook group that already has a bunch of other INFJs that have signed up for this challenge that are in that group. And not only are they all INFJs, so they understand what you're going through, but they're in this together. We're all going through the same things and we're learning the same things. And so that's going to be a huge part of this challenge, is this community that's there to support each other, because I mean, that's the greatest thing, right? Is this community of people that understand you. You don't have to explain yourself to them. They get you, and they're doing the same thing. They're interested in growing more. They're interested in learning more about themselves and lifting up their energy as well. So definitely check it out. You can find it at infjwoman.com/comehome. And you can only register for the next couple of days. So once it starts, the doors will close and you won't be able to access it anymore. I don't know if I'm going to do it again either. A lot of these things I say, like, I don't know if it's going to be again. If I do, it will probably be well into next year before I do it again. So if you're interested, don't wait. It's not something that's going to be around forever. I saw a couple of questions. Somebody asked if I have a podcast. Yes, I do have a podcast. It is called The Quiet Ones. It's a weekly podcast that's about INFJs, that's about learning about INFJs, and then also self-growth, things like confidence, self-love, all these types of things. It's called The Quiet Ones. It's available on all major podcast platforms. So you can find it on Apple and Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. How about we do this again tomorrow? Same time, same place. So you just watched that video, and I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you want some more amazing information about INFJs, check out these videos right now. I'll see you there.